Hello, everyone. This is David, Fairly Secret Music. This is the third in my Prog Rock 101 series. First two were King Crimson and Jethro Tull, and I've been getting some decent feedback, some new subscribers, and I thought, this is kind of where I'm at musically. So, went away from the metal a little bit, so I've been really listening to King Crimson lately. But thought I would go to the next band I think I can talk at length about, and that is Graaf Generator. Now, Graaf Generator have been around since, when was this? 1968, I think? No, 69, recorded 1969, January 1969. This is their first album. It's called Aerosol Gray Machine. I have listened to this maybe twice. I've had it for a while, but I don't have a working turntable. This is one of the few things on my kind of bucket list. There's a version on eBay that maybe I'll get tonight because it's on the Fee label, which is Peter Hamill's label. He is the singer of Graaf Generator. On this recording, you had Hugh Banton on organ, piano, who has been with the band pretty much the whole time. Keith Ellis was on wah bass. Guy Evans was on drums. He has been the drummer for Graaf Generator throughout the whole career. Peter Hamill on vocals. So who we don't have here is a guy named David Jackson, and he was the sax player. I'm just making sure I am getting his name right because, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's David Jackson. He is the sax player. Keith Ellis, I believe, will show up later. Nick Potter also is a bass player for Graaf. Normally, Graaf Generator did not have a bass player. They had Peter Hamill on vocals and acoustic guitar and piano and keyboards at times. Well, that was just my text alert telling me how much my check was deposited. Anyway, so, which means that I can order this tonight and the new Magma album. So normally it was Peter Hamill on vocals, always, acoustic guitar, later on electric guitar, and then piano or keyboards. Hugh Banton on organs. He would play Taurus bass pedals or bass pedals, so he kind of filled in the bass part. David Jackson on saxophones and flutes, and Guy Evans on drums. Guy Evans is fantastic, by the way. So this is one that I really can't talk a lot about because I've only listened to it a few times, and I don't have any way to play this. So there you have it. Things that I can talk about, however, whoops, almost missed. So I think I need to know the song titles. So this album is entitled, let me see if I can get that up higher. It's entitled H to He Who Am the Only One. I love that album title. Let me say that again. H to He Who Am the Only One. It almost sounds like Bizarro is saying it. This was the first official, real Graaf Generator lineup, because the first album is more of a Peter Hamill solo thing that he got players to play on, and I believe Charisma Records was partially started because the owner wanted to release Graaf Generator stuff. And that's the old logo. I think that's, yeah, I'm not sure. I think it was different. I have all the remastered versions, which a lot of people say are too brick-walled and kind of harsh. I don't mind them. I like them because that's kind of how I started listening to them, to Graaf Generator. There are a few that I've picked up the old versions, excuse me, just to check sound quality. And I will show you in these, the booklets have all the lyrics and liner notes galore. And you have the lyrics on the side and then liner notes. Many pages of liner notes, probably a 10 page book, 8 to 10 page book, with a history of what was going on at the time in the band. And one thing to note, David Jackson, I don't know if you can tell, but he's playing not one but two saxophones at the same time in that picture. He had a reed that basically, or a mouthpiece that basically split off into two, and he would play two saxophone parts or harmonies or whatever. When there was a Graaf tribute band in like 98, I think it was, they had to have, I think, 3 guys in the band to cover all of David Jackson's parts. Some highlights on H to He, Who Am the Only One, is Killer, which I believe is about a shark, basically about great white sharks, which, unless you know that, you think he's just talking about somebody who's a killer. House with No Door is a fantastic slow building song that just gets really intense at one point. Emperor in His War Room, and Pioneers Overseas. Well, there's actually only technically 5 songs on this album, but you know, you have 8 minutes, 6 minutes, 9 minutes, 11 minutes, and 12 minutes, so, which is typical with a lot of old prog. But this has, let's see, another 15-minute bonus track called Squid 1, Squid 2, and Octopus, and Emperor in His War Room. So, if I'm going to go through here, I'm going to make you a greatest hits. So, I would say Killer and House with No Door from this album. This is their, well, let's call this the 3rd album technically, but really, as I said before, kind of their, 2nd album, really. This is The Least We Can Do Is Wave at Each Other. They had some very interesting album covers. Some were really good, some not so great. I'm not a big fan of this one, even with the wraparound where you see the band right there. I'm not sure exactly who. Oh, this is interesting. I forgot about this. So the first album they didn't have a bass player, and the second album they didn't have a bass player. 3rd album they have Nick Potter. Look at those outfits and those haircuts. But yeah, they get Nick Potter on bass and electric guitar, while Peter Hamill plays acoustic guitar and lead vocals, Hugh Banton, organ, piano, backing vocals, Guy Evans, drums and percussion, David Jackson, tenor and alto sax, flute, and background vocals. Look at those guys. So I forgot that Nick Potter plays bass on this. Some of the highlights on this, Refugees, and probably Darkness, 11:11. Yeah, those would probably be definitely Refugees. So, and if you're wondering what the vocals sound like, Peter Hamill is a very acquired taste. He's got kind of a rough voice that it turns some people off. Their next album is called Pawn Hearts, and I really like this album. I think this is by the same artist that did like Genesis Foxtrot. I'm throwing everything around. They had this really weird picture in the thing. I'm not even gonna show it. It's just goofy. Oh, here he is, playing double saxes again. Part of this is there's kind of some history, like a World War II thing going on with this. I just read recently about the one picture that they have, but it's odd. The best songs on this, oh God, I would have to say Man Erg, which is a 10-minute song, and Piggy from Voivod once said that they wanted to do a cover of Man Erg by Graaf Generator, but they just don't think they ever got around to recording it. Originally, this had only 3 tracks. Lemmings, which was 11 minutes and 39 seconds, Man Erg, which is 10:22, and Plague of Lighthouse Keepers, which is 23:05. But my favorite song on here is Man Erg. Fun little fact, they have broken up like 2 times in their career and then got back together. Next one is Godbluff. Now I have 2 different versions of this. This is the remastered. This is the original. And this is why I really like the remastered versions way better. Not for just the packaging alone. Look at that. That's it. That's all you get. Hey, here are these pictures, and they're repeated right there. With no lyrics, no liner notes, nothing. Nothing. This has 4 songs on it. Let me get this because they have times on this. Undercover Man, 7 minutes. Scorched Earth, 7 minutes. Arrow, 9 minutes. And Sleepwalkers, which is 7 minutes and 59 seconds. This has actually 2 bonus tracks on it. Forsaken Gardens and A Louse Is Not a Home. And I would say Undercover Man is probably the best song on here. I remember really liking Scorched Earth. This is one of the albums that I'm least familiar with Graaf Generator's earlier stuff, just because it never grabbed me quite like some of the other ones. Oh, what do we got here? Oh, I guess I don't even have to take it out. This one I think has lyrics. Yeah, this one does have lyrics. These are the early versions that I'm going to put up, and then I'm going to just read from these. So this and the next one I have two different versions. This is World Record. This originally had 5 tracks, and this version has technically 7 tracks, but they are BBC John Peel sessions, so it's nothing really new. It's just live versions. I would say Masks is probably the best song on here. This is also another one that when I listen to it, I remember the songs, but I'm not good with titles on these. This album, however, I needed both versions because I needed to hear the difference in sound quality. Originally, 5 songs. With the remaster, you get 6. The first 3 songs on this: Pilgrims, Still Life, and La Rosa. And you also have My Room, Waiting for Wonderland, and Childlike Faith in Childhood's End. Pilgrims, Still Life, and La Rosa would have to go on a greatest hits because they're so damn good. I have purchased live albums just because one of those 3 songs were on them before I was just completing the collection, when I wasn't going to get a bunch of live stuff, because I wanted to make a live version of this album, which I think I've completed. But La Rosa and Still Life would be the top 2. La Rosa is a very good indication of the technical playing that this band can do. Guy Evans, his drum part in that song is fantastic. He does a lot of kind of hi-hat work that I really enjoy. But Still Life is a song about becoming immortal and then regretting it because nothing basically has any meaning anymore. And it's just so great. So if you listen to only one song by Graaf Generator to check out what they sound like, listen to Still Life or La Rosa, but Still Life probably better. So good. It's so good. There's live versions of it. The first time I ever really heard it was the live version of the kind of the weird version of Graaf Generator, because after Still Life, I think they broke up after what did they, I think they broke up during one of these albums, or I think they broke up after Pawn Hearts, then got back together and did 3 albums. Then they broke up again, and then they got back together, but this time there were different people in the band. So they did 2 EPs. Let me find out who played. So this is called The Quiet Zone and Pleasure Dome. And I'm trying to find the lineup on this. That's the one thing with these, is sometimes they don't give you that information as quickly and easily. Well, I'll put this up in the meantime. So Quiet Zone had Peter Hamill, of course, Guy Evans. Let's see who else was in this band. A violin player whose name I cannot remember right now. Son of a gun. Okay, I cannot remember. I think Nick Potter joined the band. Um, this guy who was the violin player, who actually, I think his name is Judge Smith. I thought he was in earlier versions. I think his name is Judge Smith. I'm not 100% certain. Sorry. Um, and Nick Potter on bass. I think that was the lineup. But they have 5 people in some of the pictures. I just cannot remember who this guy is. So 2 EPs. This is what the cover looks like. So it's called Quiet Zone and The Pleasure Dome. And there's a song on here. So here's the thing. When they got back together for this, they kind of changed the style a little bit. We're more raw. We're more like rock. Lizard Play is a fantastic album. That or song that would be on a greatest hits. And let me see. I think Siren Song, again, another one that I don't listen to quite as much, but every time I listen to Lizard Play, I'm like, why don't I listen to this album way more? It's so good. And originally, these 2 EPs would have only been 9 tracks altogether. You get 12 on here because you get a song called Door. Oh, that's where it was. He used to play Door live, and I actually sent him an email that he never replied to because, well, he's busy. And I was wondering where exactly that song was. So Door would totally be on a, what do you call it? On a greatest hits. B-side single, uh, Ship of Fools. That also is a fantastic song. But give Lizard Play a shot. That is a fantastic song. If you listen to Still Life and La Rosa, check out Lizard Play. It's very different from what you get with those 2 songs, or Man Erg, or even House with No Door. So the last thing they did before they technically broke up again was did this album called Vital, which is a live album. And originally it only had 8 tracks on it. Let me plop that up there. It had Ship of Fools, Still Life, which is a fantastic live version of that because they added a cello player to the band at this point. Last Frame, Mirror Image, Medley, Plague of Lighthouse Keepers, and the Sleepwalkers, Pioneers Over Sea, Door, again, and Urban Killer, Urban. And on this version, they add, let's see, Sci-Finance and Nadir's Big Chance. So those are 2 of Peter Hamill's solo songs, because when he was still in Graaf Generator, he started doing solo albums kind of in parallel with the releases or back and forth. By this time, he had a few solo albums, and he had an album called Nadir's Big Chance, didn't he? I know I'm not going to reach up there and grab it. But, so they were doing some of his solo stuff, which Guy Evans, Hugh Banton, and David Jackson all pretty much played on a bunch of his solo stuff. With this album, Vital, when they were recording, well, let's go back. So they had David Jackson come back. Guy Evans is still on drums. Nick Potter is on bass. And then they have Judge Smith and another guy on cello. Let me see if this has. Here we go. Yeah, Graham Smith. Sorry. I think they called him Judge Smith too. He's on violin. Charles Dickey on cello, electric piano, and synthesizer. David Jackson on flutes and sax. Nick Potter on bass. Hamill on guitar and vocals and piano. And Guy Evans on drums. But when they were recording this, the microphones that David Jackson was using for his saxes weren't working, so they had to kind of isolate other tracks to kind of pull his saxophone parts out and kind of boost the levels with that. But on this, the version of Still Life is fantastic, and that would have to be on Greatest Hits too, even though you already have the live version or the regular version. So after they break up again, this came out. This is called Maida Vale, and this is BBC recordings, and they do Darkness, Man Erg, Scorched Earth, Sleepwalkers, Still Life, La Rosa, When She Comes, and Masks. All they needed really was Pilgrims, and you'd get the best 3 songs from Still Life. But these are really awesome recordings, and later on, I will show this right now. Later on, they released this, which is called After the Flood. It is Graaf Generator at the BBC from as early as 68 to 77. And I believe disc 2, the first 7 songs on disc 2 are the exact same things as this, and then you get 3 more bonus tracks, and then disc 1. So disc 1 of this is Top Gear Sessions, track 1 through 3 from 68, and then from 1970, 2 more tracks. And then the Sounds of the 70s session is track 9 or 6 through 9 from 71. A John Peel concert, 3 tracks from 71. John Peel sessions from 71, 75, and 76. And then track 8 through 10 were from 1977. And this is a great. Like, the other thing has hardly nothing for liner notes. This, however, has... Let me move this. This, however, has a lot of information. That's what I love about all these Graaf recordings, is they know exactly how to package stuff. It's so great. And I love this. Look at this. Oh, it just looks like... It looks like a warrior behind those drums. Looks so awesome. And he plays traditional grip. So he plays with, not like this. He plays like this, like a jazz drummer. And he is a monster. Watching him play, especially like in the 70s, you're like, oh my God, dude, quit slouching. You're going to hurt your back. So... they were not together for the longest time. When did that come out? 1978 is when this came out. Years go by. They'd gotten together to do things here and there. And I think Peter Hamill had a heart attack. And they decided, no time like the present, let's get everyone together, and they did an album called Present. And this is actually a 2-disc version that I have. Has 6 tracks in the studio, and then CD number 2 is all like instrumental songs that they were kind of ideas. I'm pretty sure they're all instrumental songs. But the best songs on here, Every Bloody Emperor and Nutter Alert. Nutter Alert has that quirkiness back to it. And of course, this sounds a little bit more in line with what Peter's solo stuff is kind of all about at this point, but still fantastic, still has that Vandergraaf feel. After they did this, well, I love this. So they give you some liner notes in the middle here, but you also can see what their practice space looked like. I mean, look at that. That's awesome. That's so great. But you get liner notes about the whole experience of how they got back together and whatnot. They did one live album as the 4-piece. Let me just make sure. Yep. So they did this album called Real Time. And this was 2006 they did this. 2-disc set. Let's see. You got Undercover Man, Scorched Earth, Refugees, Every Bloody Emperor, Lemmings, In the Black Room, Nutter Alert, Darkness, Masks, Childlike Faith in Childhood's End, Sleepwalkers, Man Erg, Killer, and Wondering. So I believe that leaves My Room would be the only live song that I don't have from, what do you call it? Still Life. I don't know if I'd ever, except for that Still Life live one from Vital, put live stuff on a Greatest Hits. So after that, they kind of have a falling out with David Jackson. Something happened. I'm not 100% sure. They haven't really talked about it. Nor do I really, think it's my business to know. I like their music, but I am not privy to their personal life. They put together this album, Trisector, with the 3 people, Hugh Banton, Guy Evans, and Peter Hamill again. I believe Interference Patterns is the quirky song that's on here that I really like. Bad with newer stuff, titles and stuff like that. I do kind of miss David Jackson on sax, but I like that they continue to put out new stuff instead of being like this, what do you call it, like a, best of act, because they still will play new stuff. After that, they did a live album. Excuse me. I don't have the live album. I have the live DVD, and they still keep putting new stuff into the set list, but of course they still play greatest hits, I guess, but what I mean by they aren't like a greatest hits band is the fact that they are still interested in writing new music. Like King Crimson right now, even though they are writing a little bit of new music, they've gone like 6 years as the current lineup without ever releasing a new studio album. It's just all been live stuff, and I really wish they would just do a new studio album. That would be great. So I need to technically get this on CD too. What do we have here? Oh, Grounding by Numbers. I cannot tell you what song to pull from this. Probably either Mathematics or Your Time Starts Now. This is where they get a little bit more mellow, more in the line of, you could kind of say this sounds more like a Peter Hamill solo album than a Vandergraaf album. But I've only listened to this a handful of times, so I'm not quite as knowledgeable. This thing came out and I was like, what the heck? So it is Sound and Vision series that comes with cool liner notes and everything. It's 2 CDs and a DVD. I think I got this really cheap too. I don't think I paid much more than 15 bucks at all. And this has 11 songs on it, spread out over 2 discs. But they're still playing like newer stuff, like Interference Patterns, which is, I think on, yep, Trisector. Nutter Alert from the one album with the present album. Man-Erg has been in the live setting since they got back together. It's very interesting hearing different versions of Man-Erg, because once you know about what kind of portion, like there's a bridge section that goes bum 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 ba-dum ba-do da-dum dun 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 ga-do-da-do-da-dun-dun-dun. Sounds very much like Voivod were inspired by that. Just hearing it as a trio is even more interesting, because they have to fill out kind of what David Jackson used to be doing. They also released another live album. Let's see if I can put this up. Well, this is what it looks like. I'll just go like this. There we go. Again, they're adding new songs into the set list, but still going with older things. Man-Erg is on here still again. They do Plague of the Lighthouse Creepers on here. That's pretty awesome. I've only listened to this like twice. I got a bunch of Vandergraaf stuff at the same time. Who would have thunk? The newest live CD, I have listened to this like 6 times, maybe even more, and it's all been in the car back and forth to work when I used to drive about a half an hour. And really good album, very much in kind of the medium range, not so light, not so kind of visceral, but really good. They're in their 70s now. It's, some of the stuff sounds like Peter's solo stuff on this yet again, but still a just solid album. And this came out in 2000. When did it come out? 2016. So I'm hoping 3-4 years later, I hope we get a new Graaf Generator album pretty soon. I'll get it. I love these guys. They're so awesome. And last but not least, I just purchased this. I talked about this recently. This is a 2-disc and the hell here 2 discs and a DVD set. This is live from, when was this recorded? 2005. So this was before David Jackson left. And this just got released in 2018. And I didn't even know about it until a little bit ago when I was scrolling through some stuff on the Wayside Music website, and I was like, what the heck is this? So they have a lot of live stuff to grab if you like live stuff. I would say probably if you're interested in Graaf Generator, not even probably, Still Life to me is their #1 album. And out of the live stuff, Vital has a certain charm to it that is just fantastic because it's so raw, it's so aggressive, and if you didn't know this, Johnny Lydon has said numerous times what a big fan of Graaf Generator and Peter Hamill he is. And that was kind of funny because punk was really kind of, I don't know if exactly, but it was kind of a thumbing of the nose to all the pretentious prog rock bands from the 70s. So that just means they're full of shit because he loved Graaf. Hopefully you like this. Leave me feedback. Tell me what you think of these Prog Rock 101 videos, and tell me who you want. I also have Gentle Giant, Genesis, and maybe even Rush. I don't know. Rush seem a little bit too well known, but a lot of people don't know that Peter Gabriel was ever in Genesis. Well, not a lot of people, but enough people that it's like, what? You didn't know that? And early Genesis stuff, people don't really know. What's up with my mustache? So it looks kind of weird and curvy right here. It looks fine like that, but it looks like weird. Anyway, I've talked way too much. Buy some Graaf Generator for Christ's